Today's story is Sunspot Part 3, Eden, by RandoCalrissian. The bright yellow sun rose over a green, luscious valley. A young man walked through the valley in the cool morning air. The young man had a constant, jovial smile on his face. The young man's joy could be felt throughout the valley. His happiness and his innocence spread like fire to anyone who ever came in contact with him, for his joy was truly contagious. The young man found himself near a field that smelled of milk and honey. In this field were ripe, red tomatoes, blue, yellow, and white corn at least 10 feet high, wheat as far as the eye could see, and cabbage, which was delicate to the man and his family. Of course, all sorts of vegetables and fruits existed in this field, but these were the man's favorites. As the man walked through the field, he sang,
"Tend to your fields, for there are hidden thorns. Tend to your sheep, for the wolf watches evermore. Tend to your kin, for the serpent's tongue is a..." Still singing mother's lullabies, I see, little brother.
A voice said from behind him, cutting him off mid-song.
"Cain!"
The man said excitedly.
"I've been looking all over for you this morning."
He said, with a smile on his face. Cain chuckled a little.
"All morning, Abel."
He asked with a hint of sarcasm in his voice.
"I don't see why you would be looking all over for me, when you know I'm here, in this very field, every morning."
Abel began to smirk.
"Hand it over,"
Cain said, reaching out his palm. Abel took a bright red tomato out of his satchel and slowly reached over to place it into Cain's palm. Suddenly, Abel took the fruit and mashed it against Cain's face. Abel began to laugh.
"I'm sorry. I couldn't resist,"
Abel said while still laughing. Cain wiped the tomato off his face with his hand. He looked up to Abel and simply shrugged. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Cain tackled Abel to the ground. Abel, still laughing hysterically, was easily pinned to the dirt.
"All right,"
Abel said, trying to calm himself down.
I yield,
he said, still laughing under his breath. Cain stood up and lent out his hand to help his brother back up.
"So, tell me, brother, why are you really here?"
Cain asked.
"Truth be told, I wanted to get here before Father did."
Abel replied, his tone becoming much more serious.
"And why is that?"
Cain asked, as he turned around to examine his crops.
"Cain, you're my brother, and I love you,"
Abel said, before pushing a breath out of his nostrils.
But what, Abel?"
Cain asked abruptly, cutting his brother off.
"We're both men now, Cain. Mother and father, they can no longer do this for us."
Abel said, walking closer to Cain.
"Can no longer do what? For us, exactly?"
Cain asked sarcastically. Abel met his sarcasm with an annoyed look.
"Ah, yes. The sacrifice. How could I forget? This is exactly why I came here first. I didn't want Father telling you this. I know how you get, and how do I get?"
Cain asked, becoming slightly upset.
"You're quick to anger, Cain,"
Abel said, grabbing on to Cain's shoulders.
"And Father, as you know, is stubborn. I just don't want any problems before tomorrow. Why should I offer a sacrifice? Why should I share his guilt?"
Cain asked, with resentment behind his words. Abel hung his head low and pushed a hard breath through his nostrils.
"Because he's our father, and we his sons. His mistakes is our mistakes,"
Abel softly said. Cain put his hand on Abel's shoulder and nodded. Thump, thump, thump. The rhythmic, slow, steady sound of a fading heartbeat. The heartbeat belonged to Abel as he lay on the ground. His vision was dark. His head was throbbing. His skin felt as if knives were tearing away at his flesh. Abel opened his eyes to have the bright yellow sun flood his vision like water floods a valley. Suddenly, Cain steps in front of the sun, his presence creating the absence of light. Cain stretches out his arm. In his hand was a giant, sharp rock. Cain let out a battle cry and brought the rock down on Abel's head. He stood in a field, covered in deep, rich green grass. Abel laid on the ground. His head was split open. Blood and gray matter stained the grass and the dirt beneath it. Cain raised his blood-soaked hands to his face, instantly realizing the atrocity he had just committed. He rubbed the blood on his face and began to weep. He pulled his hands away, just to examine them one more time, to make sure that this wasn't some sort of twisted dream. He quickly buried Abel's body in the dirt, to hide a shame from the eyes of the world. "Cain," a voice resonated from behind him. "Cain, where is your brother?" The powerful voice asked. Cain turned to see a man dressed in all white robes.
"My lord, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?"
Cain asked, his voice shaking. "What is this you have done?" God said in anger. "Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." God spoke the words echoing in Cain's mind. "From this day forth, you shall be a drifter of vagabond. You shall walk all the ages of this world alone. The ground that you walk on shall never satisfy you, and it will bear thorns." Just then, God placed a mark on Cain's forehead to let all know that whomever killed him would suffer a fate sevenfold. A year had passed. Many nights fell over the blood-soaked grave. On the night of his death, the clouds covered the sky, blocking out the stars, the moon. A decomposing hand reached out from the grave. In the distance, Arthur watched with his arms folded. He watched as this once innocent brother crawled from the grave, covered in blood, screaming his name in a sorrowful, painful, blood-soaked battle cry. A man dressed in an all-white suit walked up beside him. The man had a red handkerchief in his front pocket that could easily be mistaken for a bloodstain.
"I did this to him. He's this way because of me."
"And now, you need to make it right," the man in white said, placing the palm of his hand on his back.
"But how? He's come here to kill me. He wants me dead."
Cain said softly, with agony in his voice. "The only way that Abel will ever forgive you is if you forgive yourself."
"But how?"
he said softly, with a tear running down his face.
"How could I ever forgive myself for what I did? I killed him. From my mistake. You asked for the best, and I gave you the scraps,"
he said, beginning to weep. The man in white wiped the tears away from Arthur's eyes. "Do you know why I gave you your mark? Do you know why I've kept you alive for all of these years?" Jesus asked, resting his hand on Arthur's shoulder. "For this exact moment, for you to learn and grow from the person you once were to face your brother. Forgive yourself and enter my kingdom," he said. His voice flowed like water. Arthur looked up at him. Shock spread throughout his face. Jesus smiled and turned to walk back into the light. Just then, Arthur found himself standing in front of the glass tube that the Wendigo was in. "What do you think?" Maria asked.
"I think we need to stop lying to each other,"
he said, looking to the floor.
"I can't kill your Wendigo,"
he said, looking to her. "What do you mean you can't kill it?" she asked, as anger filled her voice. The other vampires in the room looked at each other, concern spread across their faces. "If he can't help us, then what good is he for?" a woman yelled from the back of the room. "You should feed him to the Wendigos like all the other failures," an elderly man yelled. When Maria heard this, Her face immediately turned red.
Failures,
Arthur asked in frustration.
So, they are hybrids,
Arthur said as he pulled a knife from his belt.
They're all hybrids,
he said as he assumed a battle stance. Maria started to breathe heavy. She slowly backed up as she knew there was no chance in beating him. Not all of us, a woman's voice cried out from the midst of all the vampires. A woman with diamond green eyes and long and dark red hair stepped out from the crowd.
Medusa,
Arthur softly said under his breath. Hello, Kane, she replied. This is Rita, Maria abruptly said, sounding confused. She's my most trusted advisor. Arthur gently smiled.
So, that's how the last queen knew who I was,
Arthur said, slightly laughing between each syllable.
I might have known.
Oh, Kane, please, you gave me no choice, she said as she rolled her eyes. Arthur began to laugh.
Forgive me for saying so, but until this point, I believed you dead,
he said, his tone switching from sarcasm to serious.
After all, the last time I saw you, your head was in the belly of the Kraken. So tell me, Medusa, how on earth did I give you no choice?
Yeah, apparently someone thought it would be amusing to feed me to the beast before it fully turned to stone, she said with annoyance in her voice. And you gave me no choice because you were slaughtering my people in droves, killing my population one by one.
Oh please, your kind almost put the entirety of the human race into extinction. I had good reason for what I was doing,
Arthur proclaimed. Stop it, both of you! Rita, what is the meaning of this? How do you know him? Maria asked in frustration.
She doesn't know what you are,
Arthur said with a smirk. Are you really going to judge me on that? Medusa asked sarcastically.
It doesn't matter who I am. I'll be dead soon anyways. But she deserves to know. Tell her, or I will,
he said, walking closer to her. Go ahead and tell her. She won't believe you, she said, laughing.
You're so right. So that settles it. You do the honors.
And what makes you think I'll do that?
Because he's here.
After he said this, Medusa began to breathe heavily.
Oh, don't look so surprised. He never could resist your call,
Arthur said with a smirk. I didn't call him, she said, breathing heavily.
Well, I guess we're both in trouble then,
Arthur said, beginning to pace around her.
You see, he's come here to kill me, but if you don't tell her exactly who you are, when he finds me, and he will find me, I'll make sure you're the first thing he sees,
Arthur said, leaning closer into her ear.
Because if he sees you're not dead, I doubt he'll be happy.
Rita, what's going on? Maria asked with concern in her voice. My name is not Maria, my queen. It's Medusa, she said, her voice shaking. In the time of kings and false gods, I was the first. What do you mean you were the first? Maria asked in confusion and worry, shaking her every word. I was a witch. I experimented with blood magic, and I became the first vampire, she said. Anger and shock filled Maria. That's impossible. We're from this planet. We didn't go to Earth until the 1800s. Arthur, tell her, she demanded.
Maria,
Arthur softly said.
My name is not Arthur. It's Kane. And what she says is true,
he said, walking closer to Maria and putting a hand on her shoulder.
Your kind was banished here after a long and gruesome war. A war that killed 3/4 of the human population,
he said, staring into her eyes.
I'm sorry you had to find out this way.
That's why you hate us so much? Because of her? She said, pointing to Medusa.
No,
Arthur said, hanging his head low.
It's not you I hate. I hate myself.
Because of your brother, she said softly.
You know the story.
Arthur replied. All too well. He's come to kill you, hasn't he? She asked.
Yes, and I must face him alone.
What of the Wendigo? What of my people? Maria asked with tears accumulating in her eyes.
Bring your people together. Unite them, and the Wendigo will fall.
Arthur began to walk to the door. Where are you going? Maria asked softly.
To the end,
Arthur said. Arthur walked back all the way back to the other side. He stared at that fiery wall, and without a moment of hesitation, he walked through it. The other side was not bright like he expected, nor did it burn hot. It was dark. It was cold. Although the ground was lined with burning embers, they gave off a cold, lingering burn.
That uniform suits you,
A voice said in the distance.
but it will never hide that mark.
Kane looked up to see Abel standing before him, the once young, innocent boy, now covered in scars and tattoos.
Nothing ever will.
He replied.
Incredible, isn't it?
He said, glancing up to the blood-red sky.
The atmosphere here is so thick that when the sun hits it, it burns cold.
He said, slightly laughing.
What do you plan to do?
Kane said, staring at the demented image of his brother.
To have my revenge. To finally feel your blood flow through my fingers.
He said, pulling a sword from what seemed to be thin air.
So many times in history, I came so close. Like that time I burnt Rome to the ground, hoping you would get caught in the flames.
He said, smiling.
Or when I caused Pompeii to erupt, hoping for it to cremate you. World War I, World War II, I started those to try and draw you out, as you never could resist a good fight. The SCP Foundation, the time we spent there, we were so close together, yet so far apart.
He said, pushing his long nails against his head, causing it to bleed.
Those bastards kept me in a coffin, killing me over and over and over again, never allowing me to reach you.
He said, laughing hysterically.
But now you're here, and I can make you understand exactly what you stole from me. I should never have hurt you. I was young, foolish, jealous.
He said with a single tear in one of his eyes.
And I spent every day and night wishing I could take it back. Oh, it's too late for that, brother.
Abel said, with his sword pointed towards him.
All your apologies will get you is your heart roasted on a spit. Then do it.
Kane said, pulling the uniform from his chest, exposing it.
Kill me, and end this.
Abel looked dumbfounded. He stared at his brother, still pointing the sword towards him.
What are you waiting for? I'm here. I'm unarmed. Do it. Kill me.
He said, walking closer to him.
Defend yourself or all. You what? Kill me? Run me through with your sword and tear my heart out.
Kane yelled in anger and sorrow.
Do it. Kill me. Kill me now. Do it.
Abel began to softly weep as the sword dropped down to his side.
Do you know why you can't kill me, brother? Because the day I killed you, my heart was ripped out of me. Your life was not the only one lost that day.
He said, holding on to his brother's shoulder. Suddenly, they found themselves back in the field they grew up in. Abel was just a young boy, Cain just a little bit older.
Cain,
Abel said.
I'm scared.
Cain wiped the tears from his brother's eyes.
My beautiful baby brother, look around you. We are the only relics that remain of the past. Everyone that we love is gone.
He softly said.
It's time we join them.
Abel began to cry.
God, Abel, I am sorry. I am so sorry.
Through Abel's shaking breaths and through his tears, he was able to mutter 3 simple words.
I forgive you.
The 2 brothers embraced each other in a hug, and both crumpled into dust.
Thump. 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 The slow, steady sound of a rhythmic, fading heartbeat.
So that, my friends, was the 3rd part and finale to the Sunspot series, and it appears the end of Arthur as a character. Very well written, very well deserved end on that character's behalf, and yeah, quite enjoyed it. So, thank you, RandoCalrissian, for being an awesome author and for letting me narrate this series as well as Anomaly. Always appreciated. And thank you so very much for just being a good person all around, my brother. I hope you all enjoyed this series and story, and if you did, please do hit that like button. Also subscribe to the channel, and let me know your comments, your thoughts in the comments, what I meant to say. You can also support by following on the social media platforms, or supporting by channel memberships or Patreon. All of it optional, all of it greatly appreciated. I hope you all have a gorgeous day today, and I hope I'll see you next time. But until then, sleep well.